in the right webinar. This is the 10 most common mistakes panelists make and how to avoid them. Thanks for the little burble there. My name is Kristin Arnold, and I am your professional panel moderator. And we are in a webinar talking about how you can be fabulous as a panelist. How's that sound? So my name is Kristin Arnold, and I'm just excited that you're here. And I have my glasses on. So we're using new technology that I'm evidently not all that sophisticated on, but we're glad that you're here. We've got about 45 minutes. And I just wanted to comment that you can download these slides on slideshare.net. The links will be afforded to you, sent to you, and you can also take a look at this video replay later on on the YouTube channel. So where did these 10 common mistakes come from? That's something that's often asked of me. And this year I went through a massive project of talking to about 539 people. They took a survey, and I put that information together in a panel report. And of those people, there were all kinds of different people who responded. 49% were speakers and moderators, because that's the world that I live in. 34% were participants and attendees, and there were thought leaders, there were executives and managers, people who are pretty typical users of panels. And I asked them a key question about what drives you crazy. And the second most important issue was out of control panelists. And that's where we're going to take these top 10 mistakes that most panelists make. And so today we're going to talk about those top 10 mistakes and then what to do about them. You can also write in any questions that you might have on the right-hand side on the in your webinars. So, okay, so we're going to do like the David Letterman's top 10. So we're starting at the bottom. Number 10 is that the panelists arrive late. And I've actually seen this happen where the panel was supposed to start at 10 and somebody actually walked in at 10:05. How does that happen? I don't know. That's just kind of not right. It doesn't show respect to the audience. So if you can, be timely. Show up on time, even early. I mean, a lot of moderators, it's a good idea to check in with the moderator, be there maybe a half an hour before so that they're not sweating it. And then also, when it comes to being timely, stick to your time limits. You shouldn't speak for more than like maybe a minute or two, or if the moderator says, you have opening comments for 5 minutes or something, stick to your time limits. Don't go further than that. And then also make some time that you can stay afterwards to mingle. I think people really like to come up to the panelists and talk about what happened in the room. So that's kind of an important thing to do. The next, number 9, is that you appear distracted. This is an actual event that occurred. A guy named Chris Mazur, he's a zoologist, and this was written in a blog, seemed distracted as his fellow panelists gave their opinions on whether sustainability can ever be resolved. It's a pretty important topic. And when you appear distracted, maybe there's a reason why you're looking down. Maybe Chris is, contemplating what that panelist is saying. But if you think about it from the audience perspective, what is this guy actually sending as a signal out to the world? He's sending a signal like, oh, I don't care what that person's saying, or I'm disgusted with that person saying, or, you imagine the story in your own head. Maybe he's just not feeling very good. You just don't know. But people will determine the story. So you want to think about what's the story that you're sending. And so don't be distracting in your body language, but also think about what you're going to wear. Now, I have seen this happen several times. And if you think about where you're sitting, your crotch is about at eye level with the audience. So short skirts, wearing shoes that don't aren't particularly in good shape, or wearing jewelry that's kind of dangly, or just wearing things that are distracting to the audience, maybe not such a great idea either. So you want to really think through, especially if you're sitting on bar stools. That's pretty uncomfortable, ladies, if you're wearing a skirt, or maybe guys if you're wearing a kilt or something. But you want to really think through so that you're not distracting to the audience. And the other piece that gets distracting is sometimes there's what I call AV distractions. This actually occurred at Fresh 14, and this was a panel discussion. And the AV was projected onto these the panelists' faces. And so that was very distracting for me as an audience member. So as you think about this, think about what would keep you, what would be distracting, and how can you keep that from happening? Number 8, another thing that drives participants crazy is superficial comments. So let me explain superficial comments. Superficial comments are comments that just you haven't given any thought to it. It's not deep enough. People are coming because they want to see behind the curtain. So in order to keep from staying at that superficial level, you want to be prepared. And there's a couple of questions that you want to ask. First, why were you invited? Why did they pick you? Why you as a panelist versus anyone else? And then take a moment to research the other panelists' positions. Like, what are going to be their comments? What are going to be their top points? Where are you in agreement or disagreement, or what makes you unique? Now, one of the things that I like to do is send out an email to the panelists. And as a panel moderator, I like to get a sense for what are the panelists' positions and what makes their perspective unique. And I actually send that to all of the panelists. And I said, please send me your key talking points. What makes your perspective unique? What's your position on this topic? And then also, could you send me a 2 or 3 sentence intro? Now, the reason why I suggest that you prepare a 2 or 3 sentence intro is because sometimes the moderator might not have asked you for that. And sometimes the moderator might not even introduce you. So you want to make sure that you've got a 2 or 3 sentence introduction that you can give to the moderator, or in the event there's no introduction, that you've got something that's quick and zippy and that kind of positions you in front of the audience. Sometimes the audience might already know you and you don't need to do that, but sometimes they might not know you, even though it's published in the book. You want to have an intriguing opening statement, because usually you're going to have an opening statement. That's your salvo. That makes people lean in and want to listen to you. That makes people go, ooh, wow, this is going to be interesting. So think about what your opening statement is going to be, and those 3 or 5 messages that are going to matter to the audience. Not necessarily what you want to say, but what's going to matter to the audience. You want to also back up those messages with some concrete examples and some concise stories. So let's say you have 3 talking points. Have an example and or a story that backs up that talking point, so that you're being very respectful of the audience's time, as well as your other panelists. 45 minutes or an hour goes very, very quickly, especially if you have 5 or even 6 panelists. If you only have 2 or 3, boy, you've got a lot more time, and maybe you can stretch things out a little bit further. But most panels have anywhere between 3, 4, 5 people, and you want to make sure that your examples and your stories are really concise and support the messages that you're trying to say. The other thing, simply from a marketing and memorability perspective, is think about what are the key messages that you want people to walk away with. So, for example, if after the panel, you go into the hallway or you go into the restroom and you're listening to what people are saying about that panel, what are some of those sentences or phrases, or I call them tweetable sound bites? What are they going to be saying? What would the audience, if you do have an audience that tweets, what are they going to be saying? Everyone wants to know what the inside scoop is. It's like behind the curtain. Tell us the secrets. Tell us the interesting stuff. Tell us the stuff that we don't get in the popular literature or the popular magazine. People want to be in the know, and that's really what's cool about panels. Panels have kind of this neat intrigue. If you're just presenting information, well, then just make it a speech. Don't make it a panel. If it's just the moderator is going to be interviewing you and then interviewing somebody else and then interviewing somebody else, then make those interviews and not a panel discussion. There's a reason why it's called a panel discussion. Number 7 is poor speaking skills. Now, this is a picture taken at the NSA convention with Mark Sanborn. He's on the left-hand side of your screen, and 3 CEOs. You might remember Kate, and I can't remember her last name. She's with Cinnabon, and then there's Steve Forbes, and then there's a guy, and I think his name is JG or GJ, and he's the CEO of California Pizza Kitchen. This is one of the best examples of great speaking skills. Mark Sanborn is an incredible moderator as well. He's very eloquent, and he set these people up for incredible success. Now, each of these people in their own right are very polished in their speaking skills, and he specifically picked these people because he knew that they would be able to deliver in front of the National Speakers Association is pretty picky about who they put on their main stage. So whoever you pick to be on a panel, it's really important that you've got good speaking skills and that you're not boring. It's always helpful that in those examples and that opening statement is that you're not boring, that you bring it on, you bring it to life. People want to be entertained as well as educated. So I have a book, by the way, little shameless plug. It's called Boring to Bravo, and it talks about how as a presenter you can be pretty engaging. And as part of being on this webinar, I think I'm going to give one of those away. How's that sound? So I'm looking at the registration list, and I am looking, and my finger is going on to Leslie Hutchinson. Leslie Hutchinson, congratulations. You just won a copy of Boring to Bravo. So that's kind of cool. I hope you enjoy it. So let's continue on to the next tip about, okay, so you need to make sure that you've got good speaking skills. That's the point of that, about that one. And if you do your homework and you're comfortable and confident, I'm sure that you're going to do a great job. The other thing about speaking tips is use slides sparingly, if at all. When I'm moderating, I'll suggest that people can use 2 or 3 slides. But I really don't recommend slides. You'll have one, and if you notice, this is Jill Conrath. Jill Conrath is just an amazing sales speaker, trainer. She's just a really smart woman. And she moderated this panel discussion. And if you notice, there's a slide to the right that has the names of the people, the faces, the names of the people. And if you notice, they're lined up in the same order that they're sitting, which makes it really great for the audience to be able to follow along. So that would be an appropriate use of a slide. So you might also use a slide if you have one specific example or story that needs the slide in order to explain it. If because it just makes it more complicated, and really the focus of the audience should be on the panelists and not necessarily on the slides. So use slides sparingly. Number 6, the number 6 that drives people crazy is when the panel is repetitive. Somebody says, well, I agree with my colleague, and then they just repeat what the colleague said. Well, give us more information. The time is so valuable. So let's not be repetitive. Let's be additive. Let's be additive. I love that. Additive and not repetitive. So this is Warren Evans, the late great Warren Evans, and I'm so sorry to hear that that Warren passed away recently. Warren was a great panel moderator, and in this picture, he actually put them on a very small couch because he wanted it to be a very intimate setting. And one of the things that he heard feedback from his client was that people in the audience didn't think that this executive team was comfortable working together, or that they weren't on the same page. And so this was a very visual representation of we are working together and we are comfortable together on that page. And they were trying to bring out the ideas about what the executive team was thinking about their future. And so it was really important in this specific instance that they're additive and not repetitive, but supportive of each other. So there are ways that you can do that as a panelist, is to say, let me add on to something to that idea, or yes, and. When you say yes, but, now you're starting to get into that disagreement area, which is fine. Take a gracious viewpoint to take and you could say, we take a different approach at our company. We do something different. So that you are showing different perspectives. The key is, do not reiterate what other people are saying. And you don't have to answer every question, especially when another panelist is given a perfectly fine answer. So let's be additive and not repetitive. Number 5, panelists who are disagreeable. Now, disagreeable doesn't mean that you can't disagree, but disagreeable means things like you cut off other panelists, or you cut off the moderator, or you pontificate, or you talk down to others. You disagree just because you can, or you interrupt, or you hog the spotlight. You answer every question. You take the last word, like you always have the last comment to say. Those are key things that just tick off the audience, other panelists, and the moderator. So just don't do it. Now, the key question is how do you know if you're disagreeable? That's a good question. I would say disagree diplomatically. Be gracious to others and they will be gracious to you. This is the panelist golden rule. Be gracious to others and they will be gracious to you. The only other way that you're going to find out if you disagree or you're disagreeable is you ask for feedback from the moderator. You might actually take a look at the panel discussion. Many panel discussions, by the way, nowadays are being recorded. So whatever you do is being saved for posterity. So you might want to think about that. The fourth one is that you're not conversational. And this can be just as much of a challenge from the moderator's point of view as the panelist point of view. I call this the hot potato or the ping pong. So the hot potato is the moderator asks the question of panelist A, and then asks the same question to panelist B, the same question to panelist C. So that's a hot potato being handed to each panelist. If this happens to you as a panelist, think back to being additive and not repetitive. So if you know that you're being handed a hot potato, you want to introduce some flavor and say, yes, I agree with what the panelists before me, and let me add something to that. Or you can have a ping pong approach where the moderator is asking panelist A a question, and then they ask panelist B a question, different question, and then ask panelist C a question, and they keep playing ping pong to the panelists. One of the ways that you can get away from being a ping pong is that you, rather than sending it back to the moderator, is that you ask a panelist for their opinion. You know, Julie, I heard you mention this. What do you think about that? It might throw the moderator off a little bit, but frankly, the moderator is supposed to instigate conversation. So I would probably check in with the moderator and make sure that that's what they're looking for, and then make it conversational. Think about it as a great dinner party. Just a great dinner party. This is actually when I was on a panel just a couple of weeks ago, and these are with some past presidents of the National Speakers Association, and literally we were having dinner. It was a very conversational kind of dinner party. Think about your role as being a great guest, a guest of honor at that dinner party. So be gracious, listen with intent to the other people. Like really listen, don't look down at your crackberry or look distracting, but really listen to what other people do. See, if you look at everyone, they're very intent and listening to what I'm saying. Thank you very much. You want to build on others' ideas. You want to watch your airtime, make sure that you're not hogging up the spotlight. Respectfully disagree, invite others to comment on what you've said. And then what I love is a callback, referring to what other panelists have said and use their name. Ed, you mentioned this, I agree, and so the I agree and makes it more additive. I agree, but makes it additive, and you're showing some areas of disagreement. And don't shy away from disagreement. I mean, I think that that's kind of like the exciting part. You don't want to have a dinner party where the guests are all the same. You invite guests who have different points of view, different ways of looking at things, and great dinner parties are great conversations. So don't shy away from having different viewpoints. So it's time for a little bit of a break here. I hope things are going well. I'm checking on the question feed if you've got any questions. Just lots of nice comments. Thanks, I really appreciate that. And it's time to share the winner of a book. So I'm looking, so I've got a book called Powerful Panels, and I'm looking at the registration list, and who's the lucky winner? Lucky winner is Janine, oh gosh, Vartatot Gale. Well, congratulations, Janine. So I'll be sending you a copy of the Powerful Panels book. So that book is a great little compendium. It's a step-by-step guide on how to moderate a panel. So if you ever find yourself moderating a panel, that's a great guide for you. Okay, so I am going to go back to our top 10 list, and we are heading on the top 3. So the third one was that as panelists, you got off topic or didn't make a point. Off topic or didn't make a point. Now, this is me on a panel at the Professional Speakers Association in the United Kingdom. This was in London, I believe. Anyway, so I was on the panel, and these guys are having a great time. But we are not talking about the future of the professional speaking industry, which is what I thought we were talking about. And I actually made some notes. I had some key topics, key messages that I wanted to say. And I was getting a little nervous that we weren't going to get there. By the way, the moderator is to the right of me. So he's off the screen, and he's just having a great time. And I'm just like going, hey, wait a minute. So literally about 15, 20 minutes into this, and we didn't start with any presentations. I just went, excuse me, are we going to talk about the topic, the future of professional speaking? And the audience burst out in applause. It was hysterical. So, there are some things that you can do to bring it back on topic. So I suggest that in order to do that is that you be strategic about this. Really think about what your goal is. What is it that you want people to think, feel, or do? And that you have those 3 or 5 messages that matter. Follow it up with those concrete examples, anecdotes, concise stories, and tweetable sound bites. I've done a lot of media training, and a dear friend and associate, Kelly Isley, she's like an amazing media strategist. And she told me something a while ago that has always stuck with me. She said, you can always rely on those 3 to 5 messages that matter. Regardless of whatever comes at you as a panelist, if you have done your homework and you are thinking strategically about how can I best serve the audience, what are the things that I want the audience to think, do, or feel, then I can always come back to that. Always. And the audience will appreciate it because you are delivering on the promise of what the panel is supposed to do. So think about that, come prepared, know those cold, so that whatever happens, you can stay on topic. Number 2. I'm looking at a question from Sarah. She says, is it okay to have note cards for the 3 to 5 points? Absolutely, Sarah. I would highly recommend that you do that. In fact, that panel that I was on, I had note cards because I had some quotes from some experts in the meetings industry that I thought would be helpful as well. So I think that that's fine. As a moderator, I always have note cards because I can't remember everything, especially if I have to introduce people. So don't shy away from note cards. I would probably shy away from big, what's it called? Notepads kind of thing, like a 8.5 by 11 notepad, because it's just clunky. You might not have a table that you're sitting behind. Frankly, I don't like sitting behind a table because I think the table keeps me from being connected to the audience. So chances are you're going to be sitting on a couch or a chair or a bar stool. And then that way the file folder or something, it's just clunky. So I think note cards are great. It's great. Thanks for that question, Sarah. Appreciate it. Okay, so number 2 is promoted themselves and or their company. And this is a tough thing for people to really understand, is that yes, people know that you are representing your company. They know that you have a book. You don't need to flog it in front of the audience's face. If you do a good job, then you are promoting yourself and your company. If you've just come out with a new book or your company has just come out with a new product, get the moderator to say that for you in your introduction or in a closing comment, and they'll be happy to do that. I do not recommend that you say basically flat out, buy my stuff. I don't think that serves you well. If you do a good job and you stick around afterwards, you'll be fine. Okay, so here's the last one. The biggest peeve is about dominating the discussion. You know, we have all seen this happen where a panelist takes more airtime. They dominate the discussion. They talk over other people. It's almost like you want somebody to be a referee and call people on it. I thought this was a great photo. And Sasha Hill, she was so gracious and let me borrow this for this webinar. Sometimes, and this was just a joke. She's a lovely person. So you don't want to dominate the discussion, especially when you've got a big group of folks. You know, more than 3 people. It becomes pretty obvious very quickly if you're the one who's always opening, always starting the comment, or always having the last word. So be conscious, very conscious of how you're balancing. Keep your comments short. 90 seconds, I recommend, at the very top regardless. Balance the airtime between. It looks very gracious if you say, you know, we haven't heard from you, Sally. Would you like to weigh in on this? Don't wait for the moderator to do that. That's okay. You remember, this is a great dinner table conversation. So make sure that you have that self-awareness and that you look in the mirror and say, okay, am I being gracious and am I not dominating? So those are the 10 most common mistakes. And I'm going to take a look at our chat to see if there's any questions. So Janine, I hope I didn't ruin your name, but congratulations on the book. So I'm glad you did that. And I'm not seeing any other questions. So I appreciate you guys being on the webinar. So I am just going to keep moving. There's a couple of tips that I'd like to share. Is that first and foremost is that you serve the audience. First and foremost, serve the audience. You are there to help the audience get a peek behind the curtain, get the intimate viewpoint, learn something, feel something, do something differently. Serve the audience versus your own best interests. If you always put the audience ahead of time, you are going to look frickin' brilliant. And that's a technical term, frickin' brilliant. I would also check in with the moderator, and check in with the moderator ahead of time. The moderator will probably check in with you, but also right before, I would check in with them. If you have any good questions that you think the moderator might use that would inspire discussion, I would certainly share those with the moderator. And then I would follow his or her lead. Follow the lead. Have a good time. You know, the moderator has put a lot of thought into hopefully the moderator has put a lot of thought into how the program is going to flow. So go with the program, but make sure that you're serving the needs of the audience. I just saw something come in from Tom. Tom says, I'd like to add, can't hear the panelists because he or she isn't holding the mic close enough to the mouth. You know, that's a very good point, Tom. And I'm gonna add on to that one, is that a lot of times panelists don't think that they need a microphone. In fact, I was just watching a panel being done just last week at a conference that I was speaking at, and this had about 100 people in the room. And there were microphones, but the moderator chose not to use a cordless handheld or a lavalier. They were available because I used them right before that panel. And so it was a little disconcerting. And it's not because people can't hear, it's just it's easier to hear. And so a lot of panelists think the same thing. Well, you know, we have one microphone that we're sharing among 3 people. Well, still use it. It's being courteous to the audience. So make sure that you use the microphone and hold it close enough to the mouth. Some microphones have a greater intensity than others. So you want to make sure that you are holding it appropriately. Get mic'd up. That's an excellent point. Thanks, Tom. Another thing that I think is really helpful as a panelist is to make friends. Now, you don't have to kiss each other, but you should, you know, it's a great opportunity to meet other people who are either in your industry or out of your industry. You'll actually find that you might even like some of these panelists. And so it's a great opportunity to make friends. You know, there are plenty of people who have been introduced to each other through a panel discussion, and that they actually stay friends for many, many years. So this is a great opportunity to make friends. So be nice. And then don't forget to have fun. Have fun. You know, if you're having fun, the audience is going to be having fun. The guy who actually coined the term panel discussion, his name is Harry Overstreet, and he was an American educator back in the 1930s. And he said in his seminal report on panels, as he said, I have frequently found panel members at the end of a discussion glowing with enthusiasm at the ways ideas unexpectedly emerged. Isn't that cool? Have fun and enjoy the conversation, and you may be surprised at what unexpected ideas show up, at what you might learn, versus just you telling the audience. Come in with the perspective of, hey, I'm going to learn something too. And when you're interested and intrigued and excited, the audience will be as well. So that's kind of the end of this little piece. I'm going to open the chat box. We've got Liz. Liz Green says a sound check would be nice. You know, that's absolutely true. A sound check, and hopefully your moderator is coordinating that with the AV people. Always check audio and make sure that it's working before the discussion. So if you have any other questions, feel free to add any questions. In the meantime, I'm going to say, let's make all panels powerful. There's a LinkedIn group that you're welcome to join. It's called Powerful Panels as a LinkedIn group. We do have a tip sheet that I have on the, you'll be getting that in the email going out to you. We've got a panel report that's a download that you can see at powerfulpanels.com. We've got some free videos on how to be a great panel moderator. We've got the book. And we've got a membership site, which is, I'm renaming that. I'm calling it the Knowledge Vault. I really like that term. It's got all kinds of resources on how to moderate a panel discussion. So our next webinar is going to be the 7 practices for geographically dispersed, otherwise known as virtual teams. That's on March 12th, 2015. Hopefully you'll join us on that webinar. And I hope that you enjoyed this webinar. I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions come in. So on that happy note, thanks for listening, and let's make all panels powerful. Thanks for being a great group. And if you have any questions, join us on the LinkedIn page or just shoot me an email. My email's at Kristin@extraordinaryteam.com. Thanks a lot.